In recent years on social media, you could see a four-letter code in a lot of individuals' bios. Totaling 16 combinations, these four-letter codes become a quick way for individuals to peek into who someone else is and what their life is like. Called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, each letter represents a part of your personality. Either you're an extrovert or an introvert, intuitive or an observer, thinking or feeling, judging or perceiving. Myers-Briggs has taken the world by storm. Many individuals have formed social groups, receiving life coaching, and found life partners based on the results of the personality tests. Moreover, it has been picked up by the mainstream media, resulting in songs, books, and even reality television shows depicting the differences between personalities and how they interact with each other. Even further, some companies have started researching and using MBTI as a tool to categorize job applicants and determine whether they are a suitable candidate for the position or not. However, MBTI is not without its own controversies. Much research has also challenged the validity of the personality tests. Previous scholars have pointed out that describing characteristics such as thinking and feeling as two of the mutually exclusive opposites may often be misleading, with little to no theoretical foundation to support the assertion. Others have pointed out that the questions of the MBTI are often vague and at times misleading, allowing individuals to lend themselves to the positive descriptions that seem correct when many other descriptors may be fit as well. While some are particularly concerned that individuals may often sort themselves into stereotypes and refuse to change themselves for the better in the long term, especially considering that MBTI is often advertised as the personality test that reveals your true self. However, most research so far have been focused on the effect of MBTI on individuals without concerning its clear societal impact as a huge name in popular psychology and mainstream culture. Moreover, it neglects the structural reasoning behind what gave the rise to popular psychology and why our potential slippery slopes individuals may fall into so dangerous. Through this video essay, I wish to investigate the following areas. What individuals need in contemporary society gave rise to popular psychology, particularly MBTI. How do society and cultural structures shift in response to the popularization of personality tests? Why are these shifts potentially dangerous and damaging to our efforts to promote equality and equity? And how are we able to combat such issues, and what can we learn from previous similar experiences in the world? Within the essay, I will incorporate sociological theories related to identity, community formation, and societal discrimination. In the meantime, I will also draw from theoretical frameworks related to the sociology of science, particularly areas that reflect the eugenics movement, and I will illustrate the parallels and differences between it and the new popular psychology landscape. Even though the popularization of MBTI in the public sphere has been recent, personality tests and popular psychology in general have a rather extensive history and have been a talking point amongst the public for the past 100 years. And personality as a way of differentiating individuals has lasted since the dawn of human civilization. In ancient Greece, renowned philosophers including Hippocrates and Galen proposed that there were four temperaments that determined one's personality. On the other side of the globe, in ancient China, assessing one's personality traits, including honesty and modesty, became one of the most important factors in selecting government officials, while in ancient Japan, how one even makes a fist gesture is argued to be revealing about one's true nature. However, personality psychology as we know it would not come until the 19th century, after the establishment of scientific research methods and the radical Enlightenment period where individuality is hyper-focused. One of the first to argue the legitimacy of establishing a new field of psychology dedicated to personality was the British scientist Sir Francis Galton, who argued that the character of a person is limited and predetermined. Henceforth, we should be able to observe and measure the personality of individuals. Later, he established the field of psychometrics that exclusively concerned with the ability to observe, quantify, and measure many aspects of human psychology, including but not limited to intelligence, personality, and mental disorders. The first ever personality test that was exposed to the public on a massive scale is the Woodworth Personality Data Sheet. Consisting of 116 yes or no questions, the questionnaire was intended to be used in World War I to allow United States government draft individuals resilient to mental trauma and issues into the military. Differ from what we understood as personality tests today, the questions are rather simple and straightforward, including have you ever fainted away and do you enjoy outdoors? And rather than categorizing individuals, the result is more simply inform how likely an individual is able to adapt the battlefield. It was not long before personality tests became widely applied to many facets of society. Since the early 20th century, factory employers have started to use various psychometric tests to select the best fitted workers for their factories by allowing them to self-select the adjectives that they believe fit themselves the best, while the police department has long been using small-scale personality evaluations to try and understand how to motivate the police force. The establishment of personality as a legitimate field of social science also follows not soon after. Closely associated with abnormal and experimental psychology, personality psychology has focused on the evaluation of both the similarities and differences across individuals, especially concerning the original state of individuals, and view human as an organism that have internal orders. Over the next few decades, the focus on personality research has shifted from clinical psychology, which heavily linked itself to identifying mental illness, towards understanding the fundamental constructs that govern the states and actions of individuals. Meanwhile, the popularization and commercialization of intelligence testing have heavily funded personality research, anticipating its potential to influence the public's self-perception. Consequently, the research field has heavily incorporated statistical models. In the meantime, awareness and usage of personality tests only grew over time. Many popular personality tests were standardized and commercialized throughout the period, including Minnesota Multifaceted Personality Inventory (MMPI), which was used to formulate treatment plans for mental illness patients, Comrie personality tests that argued that different factors of personalities can influence and interact with each other to create dimensions of personality, and most famously, the 16 Personality Factor Questionnaire, 16PF, which was the early ancestor of today's MBTI, conveying the idea that there is an ideal normal for all personality traits, and individuals are able to compare themselves to the normal ideal personality and thus determine what they are like. Mother and daughter research team Catherine Biggs and Isabel Briggs Myers first introduced MBTI to the public in the 1960s. They started their career in the 1920s, and both are well known for their previous work involving using personality to identify which industry individual women are suitable for. However, the popularity of MBTI did not fully take off until the 1980s, when a quantitative scoring system was introduced and researchers involved argued that individuals could, through the scores they received, infer the tendency of their own actions. Since then, MBTI have been used as an important tool to many people in understanding themselves and each other, and companies when it comes to screening potential candidates for a vacant position. Many business studies scholars have found a positive correlation between certain MBTI categories and the type of job they tend to pursue, and how the business performance is positively influenced by individuals shifting their personalities to the ideal MBTI category after consultations. From a global perspective, MBTI has also seen a significant increase in popularity in regions such as China, Korea, and Japan over the past decade. In Korea, MBTI became the most popular way for individuals to introduce themselves to others, even producing a unique television show MBTI Inside, entirely centered around the differences between personalities. While in Japan, MBTI has replaced previous trends, including the infamous blood type series, as it frames itself as being more scientifically sound and proven. Despite the popularity of personality tests, they are also a highly controversial field of study within the scientific community. Ever since the establishment of personality studies as a field within psychology, many scholars have shared their concerns about the validity of these studies. The challenges can often be boiled down to three aspects. Were the core assumptions of personality tests regarding human nature correct? Were the methodologies used within the questionnaires sound and consistent? And were the results helpful in guiding individuals in discovering themselves and the world around them? Though personality studies vary in form, the core assumption of all personality tests remain that individuals can be understood through a collection of concepts named constructs. For example, in the MBTI, introversion and impulsiveness are part of the constructs that the test proposes. Some of the researchers have argued that they are biologically determined, while others understand them to be a product of culture and the educational environment. Regardless, all individual actions can be understood from the perspective of a quantifiable mixture between the constructs from the perspective of personality research. However, the personality research community consistently challenged the validity of constructs across various tests. For example, constructs such as extroversion and agreeableness are often argued to be too vague and reifying rather than revealing the true nature of individuals. In addition, some constructs such as anxiety and hysteric concern are also argued to be correlated rather than independent, which made it hard to understand if they are fundamental to one's biological nature. Beyond the concept of constructs, there has been significant debate over whether personality test methodologies can accurately represent such constructs. In most cases, individuals complete the predetermined set of questions on their own and receive the result based on the quantitative value associated with each answer. Whether self-reports can accurately reflect the personality of oneself is highly contested in the community. Scientists that argue that self-reports are inefficient and ineffective as there is no way for us to simultaneously evaluate the willingness of individuals to be open and honest about their answers render the test results unreliable. In the meantime, it's often unclear whether people, even when honest, can understand themselves more accurately than a neutral trained observer, especially given that people frequently interpret the context in question differently based on widely disparate past experiences and linguistic understandings. Even when personality tests use both self-report and neutral observations, the academic community has a lot of problems with the way questionnaires are made and how they are tested. Invariance tests, by definition, require consistent outcomes for a certain group of population taking the tests. However, personality test input is often highly inconsistent due to wildly different assumptions about certain wording within the question, especially across different cultures and when translations are performed. Perhaps the biggest support for personality tests, despite its assumed flaws within the assumptions and methodology, is that it has been useful in helping people discover themselves through engaging with the result and the communities formed around them. In South Korea, where personality tests have become a national trend, many individuals have reported that MBTI has helped them to navigate through daily situations and personal interactions and create community of support for themselves. Though there is no denying in the positive effects that MBTI has brought to individuals, there has been negative sentiments surrounding the outcomes as well. There have been many individuals felt that the tests ask difficult questions they themselves struggle to find the best answer to represent themselves, as well as feeling the pressure to conform to certain categories of behaviors in line with their type. The introduction of AI in personality tests also further complicated the situation. Many companies and researchers have started using large language models, such as ChatGPT-4, to analyze people's conversations and social media posts to check if the machine can predict or inform their personalities. The proponents have argued that the data will be more accurate since most of the data used for analysis does not come from answering predetermined answers, but natural occurring data that more accurately reflects individuals' daily routine. Individuals who criticize the usage of AI, on the other hand, have pointed out many of the existing flaws that exist within AI, especially the large language models. Not only using AI to analyze highly personal data creates enormous privacy risks, but also open doors for potential discrimination based on people's protected characteristics, especially considering the lack of transparency in us understanding how AI works. In summary, personality tests are residing on the borderline of science, with many aspects of them based on psychology and the scientific research methods, with many individuals working in the scientific community actively contributing towards them. However, it is also highly contested by many experts to be hearsay and illegitimate field of study with its questionable hypothesis and methodology at most times. Therefore, to further investigate around personality tests, we must understand what is science. Though sounding like a question with a definitive answer, what is science is quite complicated subject with various forms of answer. Is social science such as sociology and anthropology science, given they do adapt rigorous academic frameworks and scientific methods, but focusing on social and cultural issues that are not considered to have objective answers? Is psychology science, given its foundation in biology and neuroscience, even though there are a large portion of psychology research are based on people's subjective experience? Is mathematics even science, given what it does is creating constructs to model and simulate the real world rather than purely observing it? The framework I want to adopt here is viewing science as a form of ideology. More commonly referred to as scientism, the core belief of many believers in this ideology is simple. Science is the only way to access truth on Earth. Subsequently, anything that is not generated by science is considered not a knowledge source, because they are either unproven assertions of certain facts or misguided perceptions about truth within the society. In practice, scientism manifests in two ways within society. Amongst academics, those who believe in scientism believe that all subjects should be understood as a natural science, and those cannot fit into the natural science framework should not be considered on the same level or be treated with the same level of respect. Such ideas give rise to many modern quantitative branches of studies within otherwise traditional subjects, including fields such as education, comparative literature, and theology, to just name a few. Though it is important to note here that not all individuals who argue the importance of statistical analysis and quantifiable data automatically qualify as individuals who practice scientism, but rather those who argue the contrary, that any result could not be replicated or repeatable through scientific methodology is rendered inaccurate or even useless, that represents the community. When scientism trickled down from the scientific community into broader society, it became an ideology that embodies the value that everything in the world is within the boundary of science and can all be explained through rationality. Such is the reason why we are seeing many products advertised using scientific language, from dairy industry advertising its calcium content to even dishwashers and cleaning supplies explaining the process by which chemicals break down grease. The notion that rationality and science are necessary to demonstrate effectiveness is not inherently negative. In fact, in most of the cases, it is a good thing that it prevents us from falling for obvious scams and unproven assertions. It requires us to put the burden on others to prove the usefulness and effectiveness of the service they or their products provide and allow us to hold them accountable if they fail to do so. Realistically, however, individuals holding science in high regard does not equate to being critical about the validity of the information received daily, let alone understanding the limitations of scientific research and methods the same way many scientists that have received well-rounded ethics training do. Individuals may put blind trust in scientific languages used within things such as advertisements without critically evaluating the validity of the research, leading to scams and exploitations, as we often ignore that having research that follows scientific methodology does not mean that the results and or the conclusion of said research is not fallible or contestable. Nonetheless, beyond simply affecting people through scams where it could be resolved through increasing awareness and education amongst the general public, science as a value and ideology also affects individuals and their decision through establishing science as something that is inherently good and something that you ought to have faith in. And any decisions to question science are deemed unworthy or even problematic. We often forgot that science, or rather any research by itself, may not be rational and have a solid foundation as its basis. Subjectivity will always be a part of science, as human intervention exists almost along every step of scientific research, including determining data collection methods, cleaning the dataset, and interpreting the analysis. Any result of the scientific research may not only represent the factual world, but also the own ideals of scientists and what they believe to be important. As a result, within a society, conclusions of scientific research are often treated as objective facts, rather than something that is highly subjective and occasionally irrational. Even worse, it disguises some of these irrational thoughts as rational and should be believed, making those who question it delusional and morally reprehensible. One of the prime examples of this usage of personality tests as a tool for recruitment and filtering out applicants. Despite numerous criticisms accusing MBTI of not having solid scientific foundations and lack of psychometric support, it remains one of the most popular tests that were used in selecting candidates, with its supporters arguing that it has been scientifically proven way of categorizing and understanding individuals in the work setting, rather than trying to understand them holistically through other means. Problem also arises when individuals try to raise legitimate criticism about personality tests and their usage. Throughout the years, many supporters have accused such criticisms of being anti-intellectual and anti-science, utilizing the value that science itself should be treated as objective fact, and any attempt to go against established scientific research without extensive data backing the criticism up is immoral and should be punished. Importantly, science as an ideology affects more than just people's belief and social interactions. In many instances, it could also be a part of the guiding force in how we construct the society as well. Hence, it is important to not only talk about the negative impact of the idealization of science on an individual level, but also on a societal and structural level. Before going further, it is important to emphasize science as well as scientism discussed here are often wildly different from scientific research themselves, especially considering the high level of scrutiny and accountability measures exist in the science community. This is not to say that the community itself does not have problems that are worth discussing, but rather it is simply not the focus here. Rather, the discussion here focuses on science as a form of facade, which is used to justify irrational thoughts and discriminatory narratives and policies by framing science as the absolute truth that exists in the universe, and any form of deviation from their own understanding of science is immoral and should be condemned. The most prominent historical example of this is, of course, eugenics. Eugenics branched from genuine science discoveries related to genetics and anthropology studies, which put a spotlight on medical conditions that passed down from generation to generation. It began as a seemingly innocent study, aiming to use science and research power to better understand the relationship between our biological body and our social conditions. However, eugenics soon became a political tool, and the scientific language it employs became a strong justification for eugenic policies to be legitimate and widely adopted. Many early American and German eugenic scholars have strongly argued in favor of individualistic characteristics, such as intelligence and mental well-being, as heredities, with many of them supporting a deterministic view that social conditions of individuals have little to no bearing against personal growth. More importantly, majority of them supporting the idea that an idealized version of mankind is Nordic, which still have lingering impact today in public consciousness regarding racism as a whole. The most prominent features of eugenics in politics throughout history are twofold. First, the Nazis used eugenics as a scientific justification to discriminate against non-Caucasians, particularly the Jewish, turning them into second-class citizens and perpetuating heinous humanitarian crimes against them. Secondly, apartheid measures were implemented in US and many other countries, including South Africa, to justify the segregation between whites and non-whites, creating structural barriers and hurdles for individuals outside a selected group to access equal resources. These policies, in retrospect, are of course horrible and unjust towards any average individual within a society now. However, for a lot of scholars and voters within a society, they were not actively trying to be horrible against others by promoting these ideals back then. Rather, through believing in the science behind these reckless conclusions, a lot of them hold genuine belief that adopting these discriminatory policies equates to fixing genuine problems that exist within society. Even when the word eugenics bears a problematic undertone to most individuals within society now, the eugenic ideals and policies persist to this day. Many anti-trans policies are using eugenic rhetoric, which encourages average individuals within society to see transgender individuals as a threat and hence limits their personal freedom in the name of safety. Furthermore, many anti-immigration policies are based on the false notion that a lot of immigrants were criminals and increased the risk of safety within society, which then prompted conservatives to argue that these individuals should be exiled or segregated within the society. In both cases, people who support transgender rights were attacked for being against nature and human biology, and people are often cited old textbooks and research papers that said there should be only two genders. On the other hand, people who are against immigration often pointed to police reports and statistics that said immigrants were hostile or untrustworthy, ignoring the fact that their personal reading of statistics may be subjective and that statistics are easy to change to fit certain stories as well. Many people in the society supported eugenics even without labeling it that way. It is found that more than 40% of the individuals across different states encourage or support the ideal that people who committed crimes, are unintelligent, or just simply poor should reproduce less, as many of these traits are perceived to be genetically linked and heritable. Through establishing these policies, science as an ideal played an important role in making these discriminatory sentiments into structural barriers for individuals. These barriers then create generational disadvantage towards these group of people, making them harder to escape the existing stereotype against them, creating a vicious cycle that traps them in their positions within the society. Eugenics is one of the many ways that science as value and ideology have been used as a tool in convincing people its validity. Individuals who believe in social Darwinism would often argue that people who cannot survive in the neoliberal competition in society are survival of the fittest, a narrative that is most common when describing natural history. People who believe in patriarchy would also argue from a biological perspective women are weaker and more easily affected by hormones and hence should not be trusted. All these issues, however, appear to be far removed from personality tests and popular psychology itself. Many of the issues with eugenics, patriarchy, and ableism seem to be serious issues with how we treat science as a value in society, while personality tests just seem harmless and fun. Why then should we care about the potential danger of them and its potential linkage towards eugenics? It is easy to view personality tests and popular psychology as merely for entertainment and not as a serious threat, given that individuals who participate in these discussions tend not to take themselves seriously and there is unlikely to be a significant impact on society. Perhaps it is true. In most of the instances, personality tests such as the Big Five or MBTI have been marketing themselves as a form of educational entertainment, giving individuals a fun, quirky talking point and the common ground for having a conversation with strangers just as any other online community does. However, we can already see such tools being used to stereotype individuals, as we categorize them in small boxes based on their perceived interests and tendencies towards certain actions. Companies that produce personality tests market these assessments as scientific and accurate towards educational institutions and companies. And then they treat individuals with similar results in a similar manner, disregarding the complexity and diversity of human experiences. Furthermore, individuals who are regarded as undesirable in traditional work or study environments are disregarded and stereotyped into unmovable characteristics rather than allowing us to resolve the root cause of their issues and deter them from accessing help. Moreover, when individuals challenge the fairness of these tests being used in a work or study environment against themselves, it is easy for perpetrators to point to pseudoscientific studies and misinterpret data as justification for discrimination based on culture, race, gender, or disability. Even when the validity of the test is highly challenged by scholars throughout the decades, many companies still market usage of these personality tests as an advanced and scientifically sound way to select and evaluate employees. It is not hard to imagine the potential damage it could cause, either on an individual level, being rejected by companies based on personality tests rather than rigorous structured interviews, or being simplified into basic categories and being denied the potential for change in schools, or on a societal level, creating structural barriers against people from certain cultures and having certain characteristics from being treated fairly within the society. All these damages are not only real, but actually happening. Within a society, through MBTI categories, many have echoed the sentiment that INTJ is the most suitable for the business world, ignoring the fact that females are significantly less likely to fall into this category than their male counterparts. When employees who have taken the tests were questioned about the validity of the tests, as well as whether companies have taken the measure to ensure a diverse range of personalities to be employed, hiring managers have argued that these measures have been lacking and there are certain personalities being more desirable than others. There perhaps exists an argument that these impacts are more damaging than an explicit discriminatory sentiments within the society. It is not only more hidden, with many individuals failing to realize the potential damage it could cause within the society, and hence also lacks proper methods to hold individuals and companies using these tests accountable. But also, it is harder to argue against, with individuals supporting them who could point to science as a concept to justify themselves, their discriminatory sentiments, as well as policies and practices that can actively hurt people. If personality tests are not the way to go in understanding human and understanding ourselves, how then should we go about understanding ourselves and our relationship with the entire world? Is there a way to comprehend human? It is important for us to recognize the function of these personality tests in society. It is a powerful tool that allows us to understand ourselves and the environment around us. They can also help people position themselves in society and interact with it effectively. This exemplifies a prevalent issue in our society, where individuals frequently struggle with self-discovery and uncertainty. They desperately want to cling on something they feel can accurately represent themselves and how to position themselves within the society. This longing for authenticity often leads people to seek validation from external sources such as personality tests. However, as individuals, we should always be cautious about these tests that simplify ourselves, even if they appear to be neutral and unbiased. As author Annie Murphy Paul wrote in her book, though such uses may seem harmless, we ought to be wary the tendency of tests and their apparently definitive judgments to take on a life of their own. When our objectives, to get a discussion started, to simulate self-reflection, to offer guidance, can be met without a test, they should be. If there is any key takeaway from this essay, it should be this. When we try to categorize ourselves in a small box, we not only generate bias against ourselves and others, but we also miss out the ability to genuinely connect with others and learn who they are and what they are like behind the four letters that try to represent them. What we should do instead is trying to remind ourselves that human is diverse and take effort in recognizing the complexities that exist within humanity. Moreover, we should try to maintain the empathetic curiosity towards people you met and people who surround you. These actions are indeed hard to do, but the payoff would be extremely satisfying. Quoting Annie Murphy Paul again, Recalling and analyzing in depth the principal events of our lives is far more intellectually challenging and emotionally involving than penciling a series of bubbles. But at the end of it, we'll have a self portrait that is more than a diagnosis, a job description, or a glorified horoscope. Within this political climate, more than ever, we need to be sympathetic and understanding towards others, to understand the complexity of life, to combat simplistic generalizations that exist within the narratives floating around, particularly ones that can masquerade themselves well, including personality tests. At the end of the day, we are all complex beings and wanted to be recognized as such. Fear not making efforts to understand the complexity of humanity, but the simplification of individual experiences and human agency in the name of science. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you liked the video. I know this year has been hard for a lot of us, especially a lot had already happened since January. But overall, I just want to appreciate the thanks to all my friends and families who supported me on this journey overall, and allow us to have the time to write these silly little essays that presumably only I actually care about these issues and enjoy. I'll try my best to do some other works and grow the channel further in this following year. So please look out on that, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other again.